how those differences between print and digital textbooks play out in the classroom as far as facilitating kids getting information. And then the other thing on our list is to talk about the ever difficult challenge of helping kids learn how to take notes or make notes, or it's called both things in our book, but how to be able to take what they read and sift it down into something that is their own, because they have that tendency to just want to copy down what they see. So anybody have a preference of where we start for tonight?
I'd like to start with the textbooks.
Okay, good.
I think I love that there are so many different things that can come with the e-textbooks, because you can, especially depending on who the publisher is or who the author is, they can embed them with links to different sites that have more information, and there's so much you can do with that. But then at the same time, and I know I think I said this not last week, but the week before when we had class, that it's just so much nicer to have that print book in front of you where you can actually go and you can tab those pages and physically see those tabs and highlight and go back and forth. And it seems to me like it's a lot easier to maneuver with the print books rather than the ebooks. But then the print books don't have all of those extras.
Hi, Teresa.
And you also have to take into account student disabilities. I had a student last year that she can get headaches if she looked at a computer screen too long. So she had to use a pencil if I were to ever do reading on a tablet or on a computer. She prefers print when most of other classmates would prefer to read it on the computer on a tablet.
That's absolutely true. Keeping in mind those physical characteristics. One of the things that's scary to me is that there's some research that shows that the adoption of digital textbooks can save a school district $250 a year per child. So the money part is going to drive this train. And I think right now there are sprinklings of places that are using digital textbooks, but it's not, in Kansas anyway, it's not all the way around the state. But in some larger states where they do state adoptions, like in Texas and California, where they pick that at the state level, they identify what the textbooks are going to be, and they're starting to put digital books as a part of those recommendations. So you're going to see statewide adoption of digital books. So it's saving money, and it's getting more and more. But at the same time, we have some of these physical needs that keep some kids from being successful. So to me, we're getting ready for kind of a clash when it comes to digital textbooks.
When I use digital textbook and digital versions of the textbooks, it's hard to see the whole page on your screen. Usually if you have something in the margin, you have to scroll all around and get lost or minimize it, and it seems to get kind of confusing. So with the print version, you can see everything right in front of you, so that's kind of nice. But if you get e-textbooks that are formatted for viewing, specifically for viewing online, that might not be such of an issue either. But I've had trouble in the past with being able to see the whole page on one screen.
That's another good point, is that there's not a lot of continuity with the e-textbooks. And so some of them work differently on different devices. So it's almost like you have to have the device that matches the e-textbook to get it to work right. And so if your district adopts Chromebooks, but some of the companies' e-textbook doesn't appear in a great format on a Chromebook, then what do? It's like there's no fix for something like that.
I think it would be a real
In my
disservice. Sorry.
Go ahead, Cassandra, and then we'll have
Sorry. I was just going to say, I think it would be a real disservice if we only went with one over the other. I think that if it was a possibility to have a little bit of both, that way kids could be exposed to the e-textbooks and learn how to use those formats and how to maneuver those, I think that's good for them to learn. But I think it would be, especially like with Laura, like she was saying, she has a student who gets headaches when she looks at computer screens too long. I've had that before. I've also had students who've had headaches from looking at the white paper and textbooks for too long. You know, so there's pros and cons to both sides, and I think it would be a disservice to the student to only choose one and to completely discount the other.
Go ahead, Teresa.
Well, I did my inquiry research on this topic, the print versus e-textbooks, and exactly what you were saying is that districts are picking the most cost-efficient way and not necessarily looking at what the research is saying right now. The research is saying, or that what I have found, is that you have to have both, because you have to meet the needs of the students, and there's going to be some that have to have the print and some that have to be online because that works the best for them. And that's, I think, where the districts are really missing the boat, because they look at cost and they look at cost efficiency, and you know, saving trees is always how they put it. We're going to go paperless, but that's not how it's going to work for the best of those kids. So if they go back and look at what they always tell teachers, it's always about the students. We have to do what's best for the students. Then we have to step up and fight and say, then you're going to have to give me some printed materials. You're going to have to give me some paper at some point because I have to meet the needs for all those kids in my class.
Well, and that only makes sense.
And it also
Think about the long span of time we've been reading print and the little span of time we've been reading digital. This is a transition time. You can't just leave behind the print and expect large numbers of people to automatically go to the digital. That's unrealistic. And that worries me, that the people who are making the decisions about the format of the textbook aren't the same people who are sitting next to the child who's struggling with reading either the print or the digital version.
Isn't that how it always is, that though? Whenever there's anything adopted, it's never the people that are actually, you know, doing the work. It's the people that are up in their high places that don't even know. Like, take for instance, one of the buildings in our district. Somebody in the a principal, or not a principal, but somebody from the other building designed a classroom. They didn't put any whiteboards in the classroom. You know, they didn't put any whiteboards in the classroom or chalkboards or anything, you know, to write on. It's like, who figured that out? Nobody asked the teacher. Nobody asked, you know, somebody that's going to actually be in one of those classrooms. But last minute, what were they doing? Ordering whiteboards. You know, it's just stuff like that happens all the time.
Yeah, that's true. The difference, I think, here is this is on a massive scale. If you're thinking about textbooks and how much money is spent on textbooks and how much time, especially as kids get older, that they're expected to use the textbooks to learn from, it's frightening to think about how these decisions are being made. Teresa, was there anything else that you discovered in your reading that you want to share with us? I don't mean to put you on the spot here. This is not meant to be your...
For my paper, my inquiry project topic, I think I was fascinated with the research on some students who need the physicality of highlighting on paper and how that is transferring to the recall and memory, and how some students do better recall and memory with the visual on the online computer and seeing it within a certain text or within a certain font or the larger fonts and stuff like that. And so I think you could divide this 50-50. It really is 50% of your class probably will do better online. I couldn't find any research that really said we have to go this direction or we have to go this direction. Every single research said we need more research on it. And so I think it's just going to continue since it is so new. I just think that districts deciding to go paperless is insane. Mm-hmm. And that's just putting teachers in this horrible pickle as to, well, I have to have a copy of this for a student, and some need that physicality and the touching and the kinesthetic movement of turning a page. And I thought that was really interesting in some of the research I read as well. But there's no answer.
Yeah, that's true. And I know for myself, if I have read something and then I'm trying to remember a statistic or a quote or something, I'll remember it by where it's located on the page. So I'll think to myself, oh yeah, that was in the bottom right corner. And so I'll flip through the page trying to find the location of that information. Well, I can't do that in digital. And that would get in the way of me remembering what it is I want to take away from that text.
I found something also kind of fascinating, that students were saying they were having a hard time sometimes with the online text, so they didn't know how long it was. Because you have no idea how long the page is. And in a book or an article, you know you're done if you've read the 2 pages on the worksheet, But they would go through and you'd see them scroll through to just find the bottom to know exactly how long the page was. And then they would go back and read it because they weren't sure how much time they were going to invest in it. That was kind of interesting.
Now, do any of you do that when you're reading the chapters in our book? Did you look to see how many pages there were?
I do.
I do too.
I mean, that depends on how much time I'm going to need to sit down and really be able to read it. If it's only 4 or 5 pages long, then I can knock that out no problem. But if it's 15 or 20 pages, I'm going to have to really either chunk my time or find a spot in my day where I can sit down for a few hours. And for a project for another class, I had 2 ebooks, and I was using, it was the APA guide and then how to cite. So I was reading my textbooks to summarize it, but then I'd have to flip between the 2 books to cite it properly, and so that was really annoying.
What
so
device?
I could see if kids would have to flip between 2 books or 2 sources on a screen, that would be confusing.
Laura, what kind of device were you using?
I was using my iPad.
Yeah.
So I had the Kindle app, and you have the Kindle app open, so you can't open another Kindle app. So I had to flop between, I'd have to go to the library, pick on the book, and then go find where it was in the book, and then go back to the library, click on the other book. And
yeah, think about kids doing that. Flipping back and forth would be very challenging for them.
Yeah, I have a hard enough time doing that myself. I wouldn't want to expect my 5th graders to try it.
I will tell you, kind of along this line of looking how long the chapter is, the newest version of the Kindle e-reader, the device itself, has this feature where it will give you an estimate of how long it's going to take you to read the next chapter. So if you're getting close to the end and you think, oh, I want to finish this book, but I only have 20 minutes, you can go in and it will show you what your average reading rate is. And so it will show you an estimate of time that it will take you to read that last chapter or whatever amount that you're wanting to figure out, which I think sounds kind of cool. Although reading rate can vary so much. I mean, you think about, if you get a phone call in the middle of it, or you have you're texting somebody while you're trying to read, that's going to slow you down. And so I don't know if it's all that accurate. But
I think one thing that frustrates me on online reading also is there are no page numbers. So I could be reading a gigantic article that's incredibly long, and there's no way to chunk it. I can't go back to page 2, or in the Kindle, I'm at 17%. And I'm is that page 50? Is that page 126? And so for me, as far as referencing things, I get frustrated when I'm in the middle of a that's why I'm still the one that prints all the articles I'm reading in all 20 pages, because then I can go back and find stuff. But I think that's frustrating to me, that there's no way on some of these long articles that we're asking kids to read for them to say, well, I was in paragraph 2 on page 3, and you don't know where that is.
That's a good point. We're so used to thinking in page numbers, excuse me. We use page numbers for our unit of measure, and that's that whole history of print. And now we're trying to shift over to like the percent on the Kindle. It just doesn't cut it. It doesn't feel the same. Now, maybe if we've been doing that for 10 years, it'll be okay. But right now, it's just not there.
Well, that goes back into the APA citations too, because if you're using a direct quote, you have to have the page number where you found it.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's in an article, an online article, and there are no page numbers, you know, what do you do?
That's true. It really throws things up in the air.
It doesn't take a percentage.
No,
Throw it at 17% in there. That doesn't work.
no,
17% through 22%.
I'll put the location number, like 1,755 out of.
no, we're laughing
Good to
now,
me.
but someday it might be like that. We laugh about it now, but
APA 17th edition.
there you go. Let's jump over and talk a little bit about note-taking, note-making kinds of things, because I know this is a frustration for many teachers and getting their students to move away from just copying from the text. Do you have some good suggestions or activities or tips that you can share?
Well, for me, myself, I take notes. If I have the question, you know, I just like write down like, you know, I didn't understand that part or something like that. And I'll go back and I can like reread it, and then be able to take better notes. I guess and comprehend, because I have to read through stuff a couple times before I actually get it. And just even sometimes writing down the same thing will help me to be able to remember. But I know that I teach kindergarten and we don't have textbooks. We don't take notes. But we do like close reads. And so we'll, you know, get a sticky note and be like, gosh, I wonder, you know, why they didn't do that way. And then we'll put a sticky note there and then see if we get to it when we read more pages. So, I mean, I guess I really don't know what I'm trying to say.
Well,
like just like almost like putting like a bookmark and like, oh, I'm going to come back to that type of thing.
and for young kids, that's a good beginning way of getting to this idea of connecting your thinking to what you're reading in the text, and that's what we're trying to get at with taking notes. So I think that's a good way to get started.
Mm-hmm.
We've used a lot of foldables, like the foldable idea with the whole paper, and I don't know if everybody's familiar with that book about how you can create a foldable basically out of any vocabulary, and it's just a different way for kids to take notes and things. You're folding papers into thirds because you're doing ecosystems, or you're doing, so foldables were a huge thing in our district last year. So that's kind of how we did a lot of note taking.
So tell us a little more about what are you writing actually when you say foldable? It's like folded into thirds, and then are there certain things that go in each column?
Right. Well, if you're comparing, let's say you're comparing different types of triangles, then in math you would have a foldable or a piece of paper folded into however many. If you're doing isosceles scaling and equilateral, you'd fold it into thirds, and you'd have equilateral on one section, isosceles, and then it's a way to compare and to note different attributes of each of those and keep them in one place. And then that would get glued into like an interactive notebook that they would use. So they always had those notes. But the idea of the folding and the paper, there's a kinesthetic movement to that, and how they are outlining a little bit also at the same time. So I know I can't think of her name, but she has a million books on foldables. And I just can't think of her name right now.
The math series that my old school used, but we used My Math. They incorporated those foldables into the text, into their book. So all the kids had to do was rip it out, fold it, and then we go over the lesson and fill it out and then they'd be like, I don't understand how to do this. And I was like, well, did you check your foldable first? Because some of them were like steps. Like teaching fourth graders to divide is the worst chapter in math ever. And I spent like a month on it. And they're like, I don't know what to do next. I was like, we have done 3 foldables on what to do. I have 4 posters for you to use. Stop asking me and try and figure it out themselves. It's just they wanted to do it right so bad that they forgot that I am setting them up to succeed. And so it's interesting how much foldables are being used for note taking. Because I was thinking, like, I know when I was in school, I don't remember ever being taught how to take notes. It's just what was ever up on the board is what you copy down. And then when I'm trying to take notes over college text, I'm like, I don't even know where to start. So you just start with your subheadings and your headings and hope for the best. And hopefully I'm trying not to teach that to my kids. But like we did a lesson on, we were like, let's try and find the key details to social studies. And they looked at me like deer in the headlights. I was like, well, we need to start with our headings and then go to subheadings and number. We only did that activity once. We did not try that again. So it's frustrating to teachers to try to teach them how to take notes because it's complex.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't, and the kids are worried about if they miss something important. But
I think you have hit the nail on the head right there. I think the hardest thing is picking out what's important. And I think that's hard for kids of all different ages. That's why I still see undergraduate students with their highlighters and they highlight almost everything on the page because they're afraid they're going to miss something that's important. So if, as long as it's everything's highlighted, they're good. Yeah, it's a hard thing for people to do, to pick out what's important, and it's a hard thing to teach.
Well, and then when the teacher's like writing it on the board or, using some kind of a, digital thing where they can like, I know they have like, what are those things called, shutters, where you can like pull it down and like show different parts of a book or whatever. I remember being in school thinking, oh my gosh, I have to hurry and write everything down. I don't want to miss anything. So I'm not really concentrating on what the note is or what I'm writing. I'm just writing the words and the letters quickly so I don't miss anything, but I have no idea what I've written.
Think how different this discussion that we're having right now would be if you had to take notes while we were having it. It would change the whole focus of the learning.
It'd be quiet
in the background. I'd be lost.
There would be no talking. That uncomfortable silence you were talking about last time, there'd be a lot of it.
I would be asking people to repeat themselves.
Yes. I try to teach my undergraduate students how to write a summary of a children's book without looking at the book jacket or the sleeve that's on the inside that gives you the summary. And that's very challenging for them too. It's so, once somebody else has written it and it sounds really good, it's so tempting to just borrow that because yours is never going to sound better. At least that's what students often think. Anybody else have any tips?
I had to teach my fourth graders the difference between a summary and a retell. Because a lot of my fourth graders, like we read Little House on the Prairie, those are big chapters. And I said summary, 5 to 7 sentences. A lot of them wrote 10 to 15 because they thought everything was important. I was like, nope. So teaching them the difference between a summary and a retell was difficult.
So I wonder if giving that limit helps. I don't know. When you
I
say,
think for
you know,
some students it would help.
mhm.
I think for some students, when you give them a limit, at least I know with me, especially when it comes to like writing papers, I want to have a limit. I want to know it's supposed to be between 2 and 3 pages or 4 and 5 pages, so that I know, okay, whether I've written enough or I haven't written enough, or if I've written too much, then okay, well, what can I go back in and what can I cut down a little bit, because obviously I don't need all of this. So I think for some students it would help a lot. For others, I really don't know. I think for, like my niece, lovely young lady, but she's kind of like Laura's students that she was talking about. They want to say every single little detail that happened, because every single little detail that happened was important. And so I'm actually in the process right now of helping her learn how to summarize and how to, you know, take notes and things like that. So I may have some things to bring back to you guys after the next couple of weeks. I don't know. We'll see.
What a good aunt you are.
I'm trying. She struggles with reading, so we try to do tutoring once a week.
How about anybody else who hasn't shared anything yet about note-taking or note-making?
I agree. I was never really taught note-taking in school. I'm not very good at annotating stuff as I read, like on the side of the margins, just because growing up, you know, you couldn't write in the book. So I have a hard time doing that still. Just goes against old habits, I guess.
And that is a plus for ebooks, because you can, depending on the format, you can add your own notes in there.
Yeah, yep, you're right.
One of the things that I found helped my students when they couldn't write in the books was to use either sticky notes to, you know, make the notes actually in the book and then stick them on that page. Or we also did an activity that I called highlights and hashtags, because we did, if it was the text that they could highlight, then they were able to highlight it. Otherwise, they just used like a small tab to put next to it, and then put you know, the pound sign, the hashtag, and then you know, whatever number it was. If it was the first one, and then it would be #1, and then on a separate sheet of paper next to the number 1, they would have, you know, a note next to it, or maybe it was a question about what the word meant. They didn't know what it meant, so they flagged it to go back and you know, get a dictionary or ask somebody what it meant so they could take that note next to it. And that helped them a lot when it came to those textbooks, because they knew they couldn't just write notes in it, and then when they were just writing notes on a regular piece of paper, they couldn't remember why they had taken that note or where it was supposed to go back to. So the tabs and the sticky notes really helped with that. So I know, granted, I wasn't taught that when I was in school either. I pretty much sat and listened, or I wrote down every single word that came out of my teacher's mouth.
I got the chance to work with a 3rd grade teacher here in Topeka, and he did an inquiry project. I got to be there for all the steps along the way. One of the things he did was during the times when students were gathering information for their project, he gave each of them 5 just index cards. And they were to write their source on one side, and the other side they were to write the notes that they took from that source, and it had to fit on that index card. And then he put the books and the computers, they all went away, and the kids had their 5 note cards, and that's what they had to use to write their project. And so we taught them about how to add a beginning, how to link things together, how to put in a conclusion. But he took away those resources so they could not go back and copy things directly into their project. So it was really interesting to see. Of course, the kids tried to get as much on the note card as they could. And they were 3rd graders, so some of the things that they put on the note cards were copied from what they had read. But each step that you move away from that primary source, from that book or that website or whatever it is, each step that you help kids move away from that, they're going to lose some of that direct copying. I don't know if that's the best way to do it, but it seemed to work for him.
I think I should have done my inquiry project like that.
Christina, what were you going to say?
Our middle school science teacher, she has the kids use index cards too, and it seemed to really work. The more they did it, like when they were researching scientists and things like that, the more they did it, the better their summaries or their in their own words got, because they had to look just at those note cards. So she kind of did a similar thing the third grade teacher did, took the resources away, and then they had to actually look at their cards, put it in their own words, and then she had to okay it, and then they went on and did their project with it. So it just, yes, and modeling. Should be modeling. And this is middle school, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade.
Yeah, but still. Are any of you familiar with something called Cornell Notes? Mm-hmm. It's a formal note-taking process. I'm not familiar with it. I mean, I've heard of it, but I haven't used it myself. Could any of you talk to your experiences with Cornell Notes?
I know they introduced them to my kids middle school, 7th grade. So they were using them for the first time this year. So I was kind of learning it as they were learning them. But they're pretty effective. Somebody else was going to talk though on it too, so they can go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say we haven't started to get those in there with Avid. My school, our 4th and 5th graders are Avid, and which, if you don't know what that means, it's advancement via individual determination, and it's basically it's a program that gets kids ready for college or whatever career they want to go into. It helps them with their organization, with note taking, and a lot of other different skills that they need to go on to higher learning, whether it's vocational or regular college. And we're just this next year we're going to be introducing the Cornell Notes. So we've been given a little bit of information on it, but not a whole lot. That was all I was going to say. We were getting ready to start introducing that.
Is it like a format for writing notes? Is it some kind of an outline format, or what exactly is it?
I think it's a format. Now, of course, you're asking me to remember something from back in October. So I don't remember exactly what it was. But I remember going, oh, I really need to look that up and really look into what that is, because I think there's a specific format that you follow.
Thank you.
I think I will. That's something I should add to the resources for this class. Okay, ladies, I think that was a pretty productive discussion. We didn't solve any problems and didn't really find any solutions, but it's interesting to hear everybody else's experiences. So I appreciate you stopping by tonight. I'm going to stay on for a few minutes if anybody has any questions about things that are coming up in our class, or if you have questions about anything else about our program or classes that you're going to enroll in for the fall or anything like that, I'd be happy to visit with you about that. But if you need to go, I certainly understand, because I know you have other things going on in your life besides our class, which is almost over, believe it or not. Just about one more week.
Crazy.
Well, I'm pretty excited because I just enrolled in my last class.
Oh, great.
So
nice.
Graduate December. I'm pretty excited about that.
I have 2 classes
I'm gonna go.
and I'll be graduating too.
Awesome. It's a good feeling. Nice accomplishment.
No, I haven't.
Yes, it is.
I just started. Just class number 2.
You said you just got started?
Yeah, I started in the summer. I've only taken 2, so I've got, oh boy.
It goes quick.
It's worth it. So worth it. I've learned so much through all of my classes. They're amazing.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that.
Yes.
Good.
Very much so. All right, well, you ladies had a good
I'm going to go because I'm on vacation in Colorado right now. So
Oh,
I'm
you're
going to go
in
back out to the.
Colorado. Great.
Yeah, I'm
I
on
talked to-
vacation, so I'm. It's 7. It's only 7:30 here, so
Oh, good.
Oh,
I'm
nice.
going to go back to vacation.
I would
Enjoy
imagine.
yourself. I talked to
Yeah.
Sarah this morning. She's in Florida, so nice that we can
Wow.
still keep in touch.
I had one question for you.
Sure.
For the graphic organizers we had to do for the summary, do we need to comment on those, do the 4 comments for those or not?
No. Mm-mm.
Okay,
I don't
just
think
clarifying.
I don't think that was on there.
No, I don't think it said anywhere. I just know we had in the past. I want to make sure I wasn't missing it.
No, I think that's good because we're doing this discussion this week, so that kind of
Sounds good to me. Yeah. Okay.
Cool.
Good question.
Thank you. See you later.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.